you know.
Someone who went to Duke at that time told me that Miller was this notorious racist on campus, and that they once saw him sitting on the quad, I guess, like opposite an interracial couple that were like holding hands and just like staring at people disgustedly. Yeah.
What a fucking psycho.
Yeah, he's always been like this.
Wow.
I mean, I got a good segue here. Interesting. Stephen Miller is a white nationalist, but is also a Jew, and so would not be welcome in Richard Spencer's organization. But which is odd that he squares that circle, I guess. I guess it's not super uncommon. But this week, it all ties in here. Our pal, I don't think we endorse candidates on Pod Damn America, but if we did, it would probably be Bernie Sanders. He wrote an op-ed about how to fight the Stephen Millers of the world, in addition to the Richard Spencers, in this essay called How to Fight Antisemitism. And
it's like you put the shards of glass in the milkshake. Make sure to wear black.
David, can you tell us about this great essay from Bernard that came out in your publication?
I just want to say Andrew's calling his transitions like Babe Ruth calling home run. That's my favorite thing of this entire essay.
It took like a minute and a half.
Well, thank you for bringing that up so organically, Andrew.
Yeah.
It's true. So Jewish Currents, which is the nearly 75-year-old small left-wing Jewish publication that I'm an editor for, we did this past Monday publish one Bernard Sanders. We paid him purely in exposure, not 1 cent.
Experience.
And he's a scrappy young freelancer.
He's on the up and up.
And he wrote a take for us, a personal essay, if you will. And obviously we were thrilled to publish it. We do not endorse candidates, and our publishing him should not be constituted as, or should not be considered an endorsement. But
we need a working class Disney princess. My article.
why I'm leaving Burlington.
Yeah, but, it's a listicle.
No, it broke our site immediately. We fixed that. We acquired more server, or whatever one does. I had no role in that. But no, it was really great to have it. I would say our base readership loved it, and it was like really emotional and moving for them, and a lot of them called him Zadie, which is Jewish for grandpa. And
it's a derivative of Zaddy.
Yes, that's right.
Hillary Clinton is your Zadie.
Abuela, yeah. But no, we also got some pushback. For instance, the Forward, the legendary working class Yiddish progressive magazine, which is now basically a clickbait site, published 6 takes responding to ours in the first 24 hours.
Wow.
Almost all of which were negative. One of which was written by an Orthodox Jewish man whose Twitter handle is DraftRyan2016. So that's who our competition is right now.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's what he must have meant.
There are a lot of Ryans.
It's pretty funny that he's still rocking that handle. Just,
Yeah, that's a bad tattoo decision.
If you change that, you lose.
There is also... No, go ahead.
Oh, just, we got pushback from Netanyahu's biographer and Pfeffer. A lot of the pushback took the form of... what's interesting, we got pushback, in all seriousness, from a few different directions. I mean, there were people, I would say, on the left, like the real left, who were upset that Bernie more or less describes himself as a liberal Zionist, a kind of J Street type, believes in... he describes it as the Jewish right to self-determination. He doesn't actually say statehood. But
I never knew he actually lived in Israel. That was kind of
He did. In 1963, he lived on a kibbutz near Haifa for, I think, a few months. That was, he's not the only Jewish leftist of his generation to do that. Noam Chomsky is another example. And the late Tony Judd, I believe, did. And it was not an uncommon thing to do. I mean, he would have been, I guess, like 22 at the time. And, Israel was basically socialist summer camp.
He's in Israel destroying toilets.
Yeah.
Full circle. But,
I have no idea how to plug something.
But, we also got criticism. Well, we got a sort of like backhanded praise from the kind of center of Jewish media, which was like, wow, Bernie's a liberal Zionist. This is great, which is actually like the least important takeaway in the piece, but it is in there. And then there's the Jewish right, whose line was basically like, Bernie Sanders is a front for anti-Semites like Linda Sarsour or Ilhan Omar or Jeremy Corbyn, all of whom I should say promoted our piece.
Right.
Why does he never call out the anti-Semitism of the left, especially in the spate of attacks, anti-Semitic attacks that have occurred recently in Brooklyn, mostly in Crown Heights? There's this weird thing that's going on in a lot of Jewish media now where they seem to really want Bernie Sanders and the Jewish left to call out black people and like get mad at black people. Well, so like, there have been attacks on synagogues in Crown Heights recently.
Okay.
There's a history of rioting and animosity between the Orthodox Jewish and Black West Indian community there.
Oh, I got you.
And some security camera footage shows that it's clearly like young African American men who've been, breaking into synagogue windows or spray painting or whatever.
Yeah.
And so the forward and people in that orbit have been casting this as the anti-Semitism of the left, which is, an equal threat to like white nationalists who shoot up synagogues. And it's very weird that they sort of lazily equate like any young black man on the street with the left. Like it's
they could be Republicans.
I don't know if they're political at all.
Yeah, it's probably that.
The implications of it are very weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
Personally, I mean, I don't agree with 100% of what Bernie said, but I don't need to. We were glad. I would say I wrote a piece a few months ago for Jewish Currents about how this has been changing in this campaign. But historically, Bernie has not liked to talk about himself too much, and as such hasn't talked about his Jewish background too much. That's been changing in this campaign. His aides have basically been saying, like, that's great that it's not about you, Bernie, but also, like, you've got a really fucking good story where, your dad left Poland and his family was killed in the Holocaust, and Bernie, grew up in Brooklyn, working class. I mean, stuff that any other politician would talk about if it was in their background.
Right, if we could get a few first Jewish president votes, I don't see why we're not getting those. Okay,
yeah.
Back to 1% stuff.
That's like,
Bernie, when will you apologize for the Compound podcast?
Well, so it's weird, though, because he would be, and he has started saying that he would be the first Jewish president. I think he's, by any reasonable standard, the most successful Jewish politician in American history, and it's not
openly Jewish.
And it's not a small thing that he comes out of this kind of Jewish left labor activist tradition that was very vibrant in New York a century ago.
Right.
And but for reasons that might be too complicated to get into in much detail here, older Jews really don't like Bernie for the most part. There are some noble exceptions, and Jewish millennials love him. I mean, like any other demo, it's pretty generationally divided. But a lot of older Jews seem to have a particular animosity toward him, where they see him as like not really Jewish, even though he's the most Jewish man alive.
Yeah.
Or not pro-Israel enough, or just some of them seem afraid that him, if he's the nominee, then there'll just be like a wave of anti-Semitism, and they might be right, but that doesn't seem like a reason not to nominate him.
Do you think it's like along culture lines, or it's like, I don't know, like along the same way there are older Americans in general kind of like scare programming in them?
I think there's some of that. I think a lot of them, grew up thinking like, America will never elect a socialist.
Because there was a while where for 100 years ago, Jews and communists, they were a winning combination. That was like the brand. And then for a while, it was very bad to have that brand.
Yeah.
Jewish Currents itself was actually founded, we're quite open about this, in 1946, I think, as a Stalinist paper. And it became more kind of social democratic a few years later. But there's a very strong and actually ideologically diverse Jewish left-wing tradition. And it gave us Bernie. But one reason a lot of people have wondered, and a lot of Democrats and media people have kind of expressed consternation, why is this extremely old candidate by far the most popular with the youngest voters? Why don't they like Mayor Pete or Beto or whoever?
It's because he's hot.
It's because he's bae, but it's also because
I'm baby. He talks like us.
Yes. No, it's I think it's because there's a tradition that he is old enough to remember that our parents have basically tried to erase, and he's this connection to a kind of pre-neoliberal